The Mets, as they no longer control their own destiny, are an utter disaster. A $350 million failure, if that ever existed. And the amount of copium a Mets fan has to take to seem like this season was meant to be a developmental year is stunning. Now, I will say the form is rated high. But then again, how many times have we seen a Mets prospect do really good in the minor leagues, come up to the major leagues, and then just fall flat on their face and collapse? And then worse, get traded to another team, and it's just an organizational failure. I don't think Stearns has built up a very good farm system for the Mets, and I think that a lot of the people that everyone is hyping as being really good, they're actually just feeble losers. Everyone said Jonah Tong was really good with how he did in Binghamton, came up and is doing mediocre at best. And Benj and Watt are other guys that I think are going to come up to the Mets and struggle heavily. Because the Mets don't have good prospects. Besides Pete Alonso, name one good, homegrown player for the Mets since David Wright. Brett Beatty is probably the closest to have, and he's just decent. There's a lot of changes the Mets are going to need to make in the offseason if they're serious about being contenders. First of all, you have to do a mini rebuild here. You just have to. You can't run it back with the same lineup next year and expect to contend. As much as Soto praised Marte for his leadership, you have to get rid of Marte. He's an expiring contract. He's 36. He's washed up. You have to get rid of Marte. McNeil, find a way to cut bait with him. I know there's a year left on his contract. I know pretty much no one's going to trade for him. You have to find a way to get rid of McNeil. Because those two are feeble losers that have been chokers and feeble losers. In 2022, we saw it. 2021, we saw it. You have to find a way to cut bait with them. Nimmo is very tough because he has one of the worst contracts in the league. He has 5 more years left and a no-trade clause. And I'm not sure he'll waive it even if he gets benched, since he's still collecting his paycheck, which is the only thing he cares about. So Nimmo you're kind of stuck with. But he needs to be batting lower. But yeah, Nimmo you're kind of stuck with, which is unfortunate. As for some of the other things, let's address what the Mets need to do in the infield first. Catcher, well, Alvarez is not clutch, but neither is the rest of the team. He is young, so you probably just have to develop him further. It's annoying, but it is what it is. As for the main infield, and we'll talk about pitching, last. But as for the main Mets infield, holy shit, a lot of work needs to be done on it. The third base logjam of Vientos, Beatty, Mauricio, and shuffling them around isn't working. You have to have Beatty go third. Vientos is probably, he's a really bad fielder. You probably have to DH Vientos. And Mauricio, as well as Luis Angel Acuna, you got to get rid of them. Got to trade them. Because Luis Angel Acuna, all he brings to the table is speed. But if you're going to keep Jose Siri, and if you're not going to keep Jose Siri, then I sort of get the idea of keeping Acuna. Even though he can't hit and he's never going to develop, I sort of get the idea because Acuna is really fast too, along with Siri. So I don't know what you do there. But as far as that goes, like, you can't have all of Acuna, Mauricio, Vientos, and Beatty, and I'd say keep Beatty and Vientos. Vientos in 2024 showed that he can be a really good player, and he really stepped it up in the playoffs and set a Mets record for most RBI in a single playoffs. Beatty has, been a pretty solid player this year. The collapse is not really on him. So I would say that Beatty and Vientos are the two you keep. Mauricio really just provides nothing. Neither does And Acuna is good for late defense, but you're not going to grow him if you're playing him this way. You could keep Acuna, but you have to give him everyday reps, and you have to accept that you're probably not going to be a serious contender if you do that. So you're basically rebuilding at that point. Also, he can't play shortstop, so you have to have him at second base. So you really got to find a way to get rid of McNeil if that's what you're serious about doing. Now as for first base, maybe move Vientos over there because Pete Alonso, you can't re-sign him. You just can't. I get that the numbers say that he was pretty good this year. He had 38 home runs and his offensive numbers are very good, but you just can't keep him. You need to spend the money on a superstar pitcher, which I know Stearns is allergic to, but you have to do it. Pete Alonso is probably going to demand a very large deal, and if the Mets were in win now mode, I'd say I'm fine with it. But if you have to do a mini rebuild, you can't have a player like Pete Alonso in that mini rebuild stage. You just can't. And the Mets really need to focus on rebuilding, at least, or doing a quick rebuild, because this was an unmitigated disaster. Pete Alonso might be a fan favorite, but you really have to cut bait with him, with Pete Alonso, and just accept the fact that he probably isn't coming back, nor really should he. The one who I'd be really upset if they let walk is Diaz, because Diaz has shown up. He's a reliever of the year candidate. Not that I think he's going to get it at this point, but he might be reliever of the year at this point. He has a decent chance at the Hall of Fame. He's a very good closer, and if we have to see Stearns dumpster dive for another closer, that would really piss me off. Also, Diaz might not opt out of his contract. He might opt in because he's already the highest paid reliever in the league. I don't know if he's really going to get any more money anywhere else. I don't actually know. But I feel like if Diaz does opt out and demands a huge amount of money, maybe it's not worth paying him. But if you have to choose between Diaz and Alonso, you got to pay Diaz. And Alonso you have to let walk because he's part of the problem too. He's another choker. And if the form really is as good as they say it is, then you have to let them come up and play. As for the outfield, left field, Nimmo's just stuck there because he's a loser. Soto, you have in right center field. Mullins is a disaster, and he clearly does not want to be a Met. You have to get rid of him. Siri is useless. Tyrone Taylor is blah. I want to get rid of McNeil, so obviously I don't want him in center. I don't know who you really have for the Mets in center field. You have to go try and get someone or promote one of the young kids up because you're probably not going to be able to go all in. As for pitchers, if you really want to win a championship, you got to get an ace. But I understand that finding that no ace is going to want to come to this disaster. You could just have, Sproat, McLean, Tong out in 2026, and then probably what you're going to have to do is get, I don't even know at this point. I just don't. I guess you can, I guess you could get, I don't even know what you do. Peterson is useless. Minaya is stuck with. I mean, hopefully he can get his elbow fixed more in the offseason. Senga is useless. The Mets already have a lot of pitchers locked into long-term, locked in for 2026. You probably have Christian Scott coming back. I don't even know if you can even really get an ace at this point. I don't know what you do. And the bullpen, you really need to shore up that bullpen because, my God, it is bad. And it could be a hell lot worse if Diaz leaves and you cannot keep Ryan Helsley. You just can't. Stanek also, he got to go. I get that, he was good in the playoffs, and he probably would be good in the playoffs if he had the opportunity. But without the playoffs, he got to go. The reality is that Soto's going to opt out in 5 years if the Mets aren't serious contenders, and he's going to go to a different team that has shown the ability to contend. So if the Mets want to not fumble away Soto, which they probably will, they have to become contenders. They have to become contenders in 5 years. And that really means that you have to cut bait with other losers and build around Soto.